Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the B&W Underbed Gooseneck kit on a 2023 Chevy Silverado 2500. Now if you got yourself a big truck and you didn't get it OEM prepped, not to worry. You can still pull a gooseneck, but it is going to require getting an underbed kit. And essentially what that's going to do is have two cross members that go from each frame rail and create a center section, and that way you're going to have your ball as well as your safety chain hookups. And B&W is one of the names that really stands out in the leader of towing, whether it be fifth wheels, goosenecks, ball mounts, whatever it may be. And this is what we have installed on our truck today. The cool thing about the underbed kits on these is B&W has a square design. That's really going to just make sure that water channels down. It's not going to, get stuck in here because of corrosion. And then also, whenever you're ready to stow the ball, you're not towing, you can drop this in. So you don't have to worry about a greasy ball somewhere in your truck. You can flip this over, latch it in place, and it's going to be perfectly flush with the top of the opening. And that's kind of the great part about goosenecks, I think personally, over a fifth wheel, is the fact that I still have all of this bed. I don't have rails or a fifth wheel to take in and out. You can just simply hook up to that gooseneck and be good to go. So when you are ready to tow, there's actually a handle in place. You can raise this up, you can drop this in, and then your latch is going to be located on your driver's side in a short bed application. On a long bed, you're going to have it on the passenger side, but it's going to work the same to where you can hold that in place, drop it in, let it go, spring loaded, it'll lock in place, and then you'll be ready to tow. And as far as capacities, this is heavy duty. So with the gooseneck, you're generally going to be pulling some heavy trailers. This one's rated at 30,000 pounds. So more times than not, I don't think you're going to really overload the gooseneck kit before you overload the truck. Now this kit is going to come with the ball, and it's also going to be rated at a tongue weight of 7,500 pounds. The ball is going to be a 2 5/16, which in more times than not, that's going to be the application for a gooseneck. It's going to be those bigger, larger trailers. Now something, if you are considering maybe doing a fifth wheel, something that's neat with this underbed kit is you can actually pick up a B&W companion fifth wheel, which uses your underbed gooseneck kit, so you can still get the best of both worlds. But I love this setup. It's super clean, as I mentioned. These spring-loaded latches for your safety cables are nice because you can hook it up, drop that down, and then when it's not in use, just using this ball mount, it's almost flush. You got maybe about, let's call it 1/4 of an inch at most that it sticks up, but it uses this inside corrugation to get it nice and clean, but still have all that usability. Now, something you're probably wondering is, well, what's it like to install? And I've installed a ton of different underbed kits in a lot of different trucks. Chevys are predominantly going to be the easiest ones just for how open it is underneath, and they're pretty straightforward. This kit in particular is one of the easier ones that I've done. Some of the other ones, you really have brackets that bolt up around the frame. This one uses a nice cross member. It's a little bit tight to get in place, but really this is probably one of the easier ones out there to do. I think the hardest part is really just cutting a 4-inch hole into your bed, but I'm really happy with the way ours turned out. There's really not a gap at all here. It looks great. And honestly, the usability and fit and finish of B&W really just makes this one stand out as the underbed kit that I would pick if I had a 3/4 ton Chevy. Now, something I'll say too is if you're getting this kit, your truck was more than likely not prepped with that OEM puck package. Not a worry, but something that you may want to check to see if you want to pick up at the same time is going to be in-bed wiring. A lot of the Chevys will have a kind of an oval shaped knockout panel that you can pop out. We used a Kurt kit today that has an adapter that fills that perfectly, but that's going to allow you to hook up your trailer wiring in the bed. That way you're not draping it over the tailgate. You don't have to deal with that. You can just plug it in and it'll keep everything nice and tidy. So just something you might want to pick up while doing this installation. But for those of you at home that are looking to get this installed on your truck, I'll walk you through step by step how to get it installed. It really doesn't take that long. I would say if you're doing this at home, I'd give yourself 3 to 4 hours. I think the hardest part is sometimes just torquing down the hardware once you get everything into place. Beyond that though, this may not be something that you're going to want to tackle yourself, whether you don't have the place to do it, the tools to do it, maybe not even the want to do it. I totally get it. Cutting holes in your bed can be a little bit nerve-wracking at times, and you can have someone else do that so you can still tow the trailer. The best way to do that is use our dealer locator. You can find someone close to you that can get this underbed kit installed for you. but if you're doing it yourself, follow along. Let's get this installed on your truck. Now, before we get started on the installation, we're going to want to open up the area that we're going to be working. Best way to do that is lowering down the spare tire, getting it out of the way, and then also the heat shield. To get our heat shield out, it's going to be two 13mm bolts that go directly into the frame. Probably going to want an extension for this, but we'll get these taken out and set our heat shield aside. The next thing we're going to do is really just get the hard part out of the way, and that's cutting a hole in your bed. We're going to be using a 4-inch hole saw, and this is really going to set the tone for the rest of the installation. So making sure we get the proper measurements is going to be key. Now on our truck today, the center that we're going to find is on a raised portion. So we're going to be looking for the center point. If you look at the end of the tailgate, there's a little arrow, and you can find that center point pretty easily. Now, depending on the bed length determines where you're going to be cutting. And ours being just a short bed today, we're going to be using the measurement that's normally 37 1/8, but we have a spray-in bed liner, and to account for that, normally add about 1/8 of an inch. So that puts us at 37 1/4. So I just simply measured from the end of our bed, went back to 37 1/4, and I marked that with a paint pen. So at this point, I'm going to drill our pilot hole first. Once we have that pilot hole, we'll grab our 4-inch hole saw, and we're going to cut this entire section out. Just take your time, especially with the spray-in bed liner. Just kind of working it to where it's going to obviously cut the top part first, but just make sure you keep this centered up. It can grab, and this can be a wrist breaker if you don't do it right. So what I normally do is stand up and get the drill between my legs to kind of hold that in place, and we'll get this drilled out. Now I'm just going to come back with a file and knock down any of the burrs that we have here. That's just going to prevent any scratching on our gooseneck as we raise it up, and also just, make it a nice clean finished look. So we'll go through all this, but there's going to be raw exposed metal from where we cut, so I recommend having some spray paint available. If it's a painted bed and you want to make it look nice, you can always get a touch-up pen and just use that around the edges. But the main thing is we're covering those raw edges. So I'll file this down, vacuum everything up, and then we'll hit it with some paint. Now we also need to remove the heat shield that's right above the exhaust. So at the highest point, you'll see this one that we have under here. And there's going to be a 13mm bolt on this cross member, as well as one that's further up above or in the front of the axle. But there's going to be two mounting points that are on the top of the frame rail. We're going to be able to access those when we loosen up the wheel well liners. So just a point of reference, I'll point those out when we get to that side, but we are going to need to remove this heat shield. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to get my 13 taken out here, as well as the one up front, and then we'll get those on the side once we get those wheel well liners peeled back. To get the wheel well liner loose, it's going to be T15 Torx bits holding it in place, and there's going to be 3 of them. We're not going to completely remove the wheel well liner. In fact, I would highly suggest against it. They are a pain to get back in place. So really, there's a split here. We just need to peel this back to gain access to that hardware for the heat shield, and it is going to come in play necessary on the other side for when we put our handle in. So we'll get these all removed, and then I'll peel these back. As long as we have access to this area, we'll be looking good. And as I mentioned, our heat shield, we have that 13mm here, and then there's one that's tucked back here. So the best way to get to that is going to be a ratcheting 13mm wrench. Once you get the 4 bolts off of the heat shield, it's probably going to be compressed into the undercoating that they use that's rubberized. So just a little bit of pressure and this should come out. Now we're going to get ready to start assembling the cross members and get them up into place. And the cross members are just going to be a solid bar with 2 plates that attach to the end. And we're only going to be attaching one side, and that's so we can slide this up and into place. And what we need to do is familiarize ourselves where they're going to go, because our brackets create a wing that sits on the top of the frame. And so if you reach up, you're going to find that there's going to be 2 threaded holes next to each other. So I have 2 of them here, and then you're going to have them across, and then as you go farther forward, we have them right here. So that's where we're going to be aiming to put our cross members. So what we'll be doing is sliding ours kind of in place and up over the exhaust. And that's where it can get pretty tight here. So I am going to take down our isolator on the exhaust. This is a pretty solid exhaust, so it's really not going to drop any, but this will allow us to kind of pull that down and just get a little bit more wiggle room when the time comes to put that cross member up. So to get that popped off, sometimes soapy water will help a little bit, kind of make these budge a little bit better, but generally just a pry bar here, and we should be able to get this to pop off. So we'll begin the assembly on our first cross member, and you'll grab the cross member and look for the weld inside. You'll see this portion right here. We're gonna have that facing down. So just keep it in that orientation, and then we're gonna grab the side plate that's going to be bolting up. This is gonna be that spot where we found those threaded holes. So this is gonna slide up over the cross member, and we're gonna get our holes aligned. This bracket is slotted, so ideally we try to get this as centered up as possible, and then we'll take our large bolts, we'll pass this through, and then on the back side we'll take our serrated flange nuts and get those started. Now we're going to be snugging these down and using a torque wrench to get them torqued down properly. So grab a 15/16 socket, a torque wrench, and a 15/16 wrench. Now, throughout the whole process of the Underbed Gooseneck kit, we are going to be torquing down hardware, so I highly recommend having a 1/2-inch torque wrench to get to those torque settings. And we're going to get these torqued down to the settings in the instruction manual. So, a little tricky here, just make sure you have a solid surface to be able to do that. And then just have your wrench on the head of the bolt and your socket on the nut side and get these both torqued down. Now while we have these tools out, we're going to just get our other bracket in place. Now looking at the instructions, I don't know how particular it needs to be as far as the way that the hardware goes, but I'm going to follow the instruction manual just to be sure. So as I assemble this, you'll see that the bolt passed from the back to the front. This is going to be our rear cross member. The front one towards the cab, I just have similar, it's the same hardware, but we're going to have that passing back. So I don't think it makes a huge difference, but just to make sure that we're cohesive with the instructions, we'll get these assembled here. Now, the other side, we're going to wait to get that installed, and that's going to allow us to slide this up into place. So I'll get this hardware started and torqued down, and then we can get ready to raise this one up. So now we'll grab our assembly. We've got the nuts on the back side here. We're going to slide this portion up, and there's a bracket that's located up here. Just make sure we're not damaging any lines as we get this slid in place. And then this is where getting that exhaust loose definitely comes into play. So it's going to rest roughly about here, give or take. But for now, we're going to get our exhaust just where we're going to rest that cross member on the exhaust. And then we're going to grab that extra side plate, and we're going to loosely put the hardware in place. You can see pretty quickly why we had to wait to put this on, because it's a fairly tight fit. Now, put this over the frame rail and push it off as far as you can to the driver's side. And then we're going to grab this bracket, we'll slide it up over the exhaust, and you'll see that this is going to rest up here, but we need to get this aligned with our bracket. There is an O2 sensor on this exhaust too, so just be careful. I might be able to slip this in here. And just know it is a pretty tight fit here, so we're going to have to shimmy this around until we can get this aligned, and then we'll get our bolts in place. I think the best bet is you see how I have this resting, and just basically just slide this into place as we go. It's still pretty tight here, but I think we can get this to shimmy in. There we are. So now we'll grab our hardware. We'll get that started. Now we're not going to tighten this one down. We're just going to leave it hand tight. So once you get your hardware passed in and the nut started, just a few threads should cover it for now. Now we'll grab the rear cross member, and we're going to do the same thing. Now just make sure that you have your cross members roughly in the right place by kind of reaching up where those threaded holes are going to be, and just scoot them out just a little bit, because we're going to get our center section raised up here. We need to do a little quick assembly on that, but Main thing is we have that space open, that way we can raise it up. Now for our center section, we'll have our latch mechanism, and this can go really on either side depending on which bed length you have. So we have a short bed, and if yours is a short bed, you're going to follow the same step. If it's a long bed, you would just simply flip this around. And really what you're looking for is where this opening is for the bed corrugation or that channel across. So for the short bed, that's going to be on the front side, and we're going to put our assembly on the left or the driver's side. And to do that, this just slides into place, and we're going to use carriage bolts and the flange nuts that they have supplied. So I'll just show you here how that's going to go. This will slide through the hole, and then that metal channel should slide through here, and then these are going to be aligned in place. So I'll grab our carriage bolts and our flange nut. I'm just going to get this started by hand real quick. And when we tighten these down, just push this all the way back. Make sure that it's resting as far as it can in that center socket. And then it's going to be a 1/2 inch socket to get these tightened down. So I'm just pushing up on the carriage bolt. And we'll get both sides tightened down. Now something we need to do before getting that center section up as well is get our brackets in place. This is going to go through our main cross members that we have, and we'll have our bolts passing through. But as I pass them, I'm going to leave as much flush on this front side as I can, and that way when we get our center section up, all we'll have to do is raise it, push these in, and that'll support it. So we'll get this one in place first. So our rear one, that's going to go towards the tailgate. And we're going to keep the hardware the same direction as we've done so far. And as I said, just kind of have a few threads sticking out, but these are still pretty far back again, so that way when we raise it up, it'll be a lot easier to get in place. Now on our front one, it's also going to go on the forward side, and we'll get our hardware passed through, so it all should look cohesive with what you have with your pre-existing hardware. Now at this point you may want an extra set of hands. It's fairly heavy assembly, but I'm going to raise this up. We're going to align those bolts that we just passed through with those brackets, and as long as we raise this up, get those pushed through on both ends, that'll support this. Just make sure it's not going to fall on you. So as I mentioned previous, on our short bed we have this going towards the front, and our opening for our gooseneck should go where we cut our hole. And the main thing is getting that hole up into where we cut. That way it can sit proper. So I'll shift this around and then move this. Where's it's close here. And you may have to shift your cross members a little bit for it to align, because right now I can't actually get these bolts to pass through yet until I get that through the hole up top. So I'm going to play around with this until I can get it to drop through. So while that's supported in place, we're going to grab our serrated flange nuts, and I'm going to get these started. That way it's definitely going to hold this up. Now on these more forward ones, it might be a little bit tight here, so if you have to push the bolt back just a little bit to give yourself clearance to start the nut, you can go ahead and do that. But we'll get these loosely in place for now. At this point, we're going to get everything aligned by getting our side brackets aligned with those holes that we found previous, those threaded spots, and we're going to get them started with our hardware. Now, you may want to go to the side where we peeled back our fender liners. If not, just kind of raising it up, and you will have to kind of shift stuff around a little bit to get them all started. So just a few threads started on each of them is going to be the ticket. So total of 8 of them. There's 2 per side per cross member. So we'll get these all started. Now, if you haven't already, they mention a lifting device, and that's really to draw this up as much as possible so it's going to sit nice and flush. After looking at this 4-inch hole saw, does not give a ton of extra wiggle room. So when you're lifting that center section up, reason being, it's a really tight fit, but it looks really good when it's all said and done. So the lifting device will just make sure that it's going to hold that position as we tighten everything down. Now, this is an old fifth wheel rail and just a ratchet strap, but if you need to create this at home, you can just get 2 jack stands and a pipe across there with a ratchet strap and just draw it up. You should be able to get this as centered up. I mean, really, you only have one shot because of that hole being that size, but this is going to hold this up in place. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and do that. You should have the mechanism closed so you can hook that ratchet strap on there and then to your upper mount, whatever you're using, and just crank that up. Now, we got everything really in place, so it's going to come down to tightening and torquing it down. And there is a specific way to do that to make sure that it's going to be properly seated. The first thing that we're going to do is tackle the bolts that go where we put those spacer brackets, and we're going to get those tightened down. We're going to eventually come back with a torque wrench and follow the same steps, but for the first part, we're going to tighten these down. And now's a good chance to make sure that our cross members are perfectly parallel with each other, and that way the head's not going to be twisted. On other goosenecks, that's not really an issue, but with the B&W being a square opening, we want to make sure that this is perpendicular exactly where we need it. And once those are tightened down, the next ones we're going to do are going to be the bolts that threaded into the frame. We'll get those all tightened down, and I'll show you how to attack those. They are a little bit tricky. And then once we get those tightened down, then we'll come back and do where our brackets bolt up to our cross member. So just make sure you're following those steps. Most of this is going to be a 15/16 wrench and socket combo to get these all snugged down. So we'll go ahead and get that done, and then I'll show you how to get to those bolts on the side. Now on the side, to get to those bolts at the top, an 18mm ratcheting wrench is going to be the key. You can get them pretty easily here, and you should be able to tighten them up. Now, something to keep in mind is when it comes time to torque it down, these are going to be tricky. Unless you have a box end 18mm that goes on a 1/2-inch torque wrench, they're going to be really hard to torque down. So as much as I want to tell you make it happen somehow or another, I'm not going to say don't use a torque wrench, but if you're in a situation where you can't get it tightened, best bet is get your wrench on there, get a decent size one, and maybe some leverage. You can use another wrench or a pipe extension on it to really get those cranked down to roughly the torque setting that the other hardware is. So that's up to you, but it is going to be tricky. You're not really going to be able to get a socket on there in order for that torque wrench to torque it down properly. Once you get all your hardware torqued down, you can now release your lifting device, and in theory, if you did everything properly, it should stay in place. Now head back underneath, we're going to get our handle attached to our latch, and we're going to be attaching it to this portion, but we have those bolts that kind of held that in place. That's going to get in the way of the carriage bolt that we're going to pass in. So what we're going to do is pull this out, and you'll see how the mechanism works. So if you pull and twist, that's going to lock that in position, and it's going to make it to where we can get our handle attached. Now you can pass it from the outside, or if you're under here, you can just simply run this through in between the bed and the frame, and make sure that the handle is facing down. So it should look just like this. And this inset is where we want to put the handle before putting our carriage bolt and then our flange nut in place. And then we can get this tightened down. Now, something I suggest as you're tightening this is to hold the end of the handle, because if you do start to wiggle this a little bit, it can unlatch on you and potentially pinch your hands. So I just have my hand on the handle as I'm snugging this down with my 1/2-inch socket. Now you probably noticed that that handle's in the way of the fender liners, so we are going to be modifying the fender liners a little bit. So just a little trimming, that way we can actuate that handle nice and easily. So I'm going to mark it out based on the instructions, and then we'll cut accordingly. So I marked this out. This whole section is going to be gone. The main thing is we still have the attachment point, so we can get this all buttoned up, but this is going to allow that handle to sit in here. And the way to lock it in place is going to be a twisting method and pulling. So we'll get this cut out. We can always cut a little bit more. I'm just going to use a pair of snips here. But this is really going to just be a allowing us to get nice smooth actuation, and if we need to trim a little bit more, we can absolutely do that. So at this point, what you're going to want to do is you should have easy access to the handle. Make sure you can pull it out, and that twisting method is how you're going to get this to lock. So make sure that you're able to get that lock to actually kind of go into place. So twisting back is kind of exactly how we get it to lock. So there'll be a pull and a twist. Now, because this is all in the way, I'm actually going to go ahead and get my hardware in so we can really see how it works. And again, we can always trim a little bit more if we need to. Now we're in the home stretch here. We need to get our safety chain attachments in place, and that's going to be the template that we're going to use is underneath from the center section. So there should be the 4 holes. There's a few different ways you can do this. If you wanted to use that and drill an 11/16 hole from the bottom, by all means. I've had a lot of luck by drilling a small pilot underneath, and then I go up with a step bit, and I think that ends up being a little bit cleaner of a look overall. So that's the way that I'm going to do it. It's really up to you how you want to do it, but try to center it up as much as you can in the hole, and then drill that pilot hole all the way through. So with my pilot holes drilled, I'm just going to grab my step bit and enlarge it. And having your U-bolts handy is nice. You can really test to see how they're going to fit in here. So you really want them to be able to drop down as flat as they can get, but also not really have a whole lot of resistance as you raise them up. So these will be spring loaded, and so the smoother you make the holes, the better the actuation it's going to be every time you want to hook up your safety chains. So I'm going to get these drilled out, and then we'll test to see how it looks. So with those drilled out, I should be able to just drop that in nice and smooth, and you can see I can pull this up with no problem. So if you go a little bit larger, that's not a big deal. I am going to vacuum this up, and just like before, we want to hit that raw edge of metal there with some paint just to protect it. Once you have both sides done, you can drop these into place, and then we'll head underneath to get the springs and the nuts attached. Now for the springs, pretty simple. Once you separate them, I would highly suggest pushing these up higher than the threads, and the reason being is as you tighten this nut, it's very possible that that spring will get caught in the threads and kind of mangle it in the process. So once you have that on, a 15/16, we're going to just bump this until it's flush with the bottom of those threads. And then from here, we're just going to continue for the remaining 3 studs. And really, besides that, all that's left to do is get your ball in place, latch it up, and then you can put your spare tire. The one heat shield will go back up. That obviously the one that went on the frame, we're going to omit that. But other than that, you're ready to hook up your trailer and hit the road. Hopefully this video helped you get your underbed kit installed, or maybe reaching out to that dealer to get it installed was the best way to do it. Either way, let us know what kind of application you're doing. Are you pulling, farm equipment, you hauling cars, whatever it may be. We love to see it in action. So take a photo, send us a comment. Any tips or tricks that you found along the way is helpful for not only us, but neighbors like you. Make sure that they get the best product and no buyer's remorse when it comes to an investment like this on your truck. My name's Brad. Thanks for watching this installation on the B&W Underbed Gooseneck kit on a 2023 Chevy Silverado 2500.